Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick, brief post or bio regarding the last 7 years because I'm going to discuss after this video what I've studied and what I've worked at and how things come about in the last 7 years and why did people who were told to stop interfering continued to interfere and it did so over a 7 year period. So let me start. First of all, my name is Justin Mark Fleming. Never been known as any other last name. I make that clear. So Fleming is my last name. My dad is a builder, Mark Ian Fleming. Where I get my complexion from, as I've always said, it comes from Stanley Fleming. So a lot of the Fleming side on my father's side, they do look ethnic. Never had this brought up before into the last 7 years. So Christy Saruni looks similar. Christy Saruni is my dad's younger sister, Auntie Linda's daughter. I think there's a Shane. From Parramatta, now lives on the Central Coast. Shane Johnson, because that's his father's name, but his mother is Sandra Fleming. Sandra Fleming is my dad's older sister who's passed away. He actually throws very much his mother and my grandfather, Stanley Fleming. Without further ado, rambling on about that, how this came about was Stanley was an orphan. So my grandfather, Stanley Fleming, he was actually raised by Edith Kavanagh, 20 Botany Road, Botany Bay there. And Kavanagh, are well renowned for Sydney, first Australian sort of pioneers. And Edith was a spinster. She owned the grounds there. I've actually put some post aerial views of that up where they lived at, which is 20 Botany Road, Botany Bay. And that's where Stanley Fleming was raised. So his name was Stanley Fleming. He came with the name Stanley Fleming, but Edith Kavanagh raised him. He never, according to the family, he never knew his own parents. And my father's siblings grew up with, knowing Edith. So, there's that bit of mystery is sort of solved. Why is it? You look at Dad's side and they've all got black hair. Some have straight, some have curly, some have frizzy, some have wavy. My grandfather, Stanley Fleming, had thick black, thickest, blackest, frizziest, untamable hair to the day he died. Just a matted hair. My auntie Linda has her hair thinned out. My auntie Sandra had big afro hair. And Auntie Sharon, I think she's got a bit different hair than that, but they all look different. It's all a mixed, and that's where on Dad's side they all say, "Oh, we throw ethnic." So even my cousin Meredith, who lives down in Shell Harbour, I sat with Meredith, and she said, "Oh God, who knows what Stanley was?" I mean, you look at it, Pop Stanley Fleming, and he looks so ethnic. He could have been Lebanese, he could have been Italian, he could have been Maltese, he could have been. Well, they actually go further and say Greek. I think he looks, I don't know. Could be just, where the name comes from. Could be just a dark Danish or what is it? Fleming's the name derives from the area where, which I made this statement, and it's true. If you look up, if you do history on names, and so not just BS stuff to do with these naming sort of online stuff, but if you actually do the research of where a name's derived from, Fleming with two M's is derived from, it's Flemish. It comes from the area where Belgium meets France. So that's where it originally derived from, that. Without further ado, without actually discussing it more, that I hope that is settled. My hair is actually naturally wavy. I've always straightened it, brushed it straight. I don't see the big deal. It's just brushing it straight. I did have it chemically straightened. That's right. On my green card photo, it's chemically straightened. There's also another photo of me in November 2012. I had it chemically straightened. At You Hair and Beauty, which is Cleveland Street, Surrey Hills. I've had it chemically straightened before. No big deal. It's frizzy. So I actually went to Franca and said, because my hair's so frizzy, can you do something about it? Can I get treatment? She goes, get it chemically straightened, take the frizziness out. So I did. Nothing to, make a big deal about. So there's that aside. I'm also going to bring up, I'm not related to Rackley's. There's been a massive big issue in the last 7 years caused because somebody said my last name was Rackley. It's not. If anybody said that, they obviously don't know me and they don't know my family. The only small, tiny hair fraction of my life that they would know is that my mother did move from Sydney. We're all from Sydney. My mother moved with her second husband to an area that we have no family and no friends. And she moved there with her second husband, which is why those stupid people, and that's the only way you could describe them. They're stupid people. They would keep making the same mistake over and over again when you tell them you've got wrong information. Stop calling me by someone else's last name. Not known as that last name. I told you this, and I told you once, and I told you 1 million times. And the weird thing about that is, because my mother's second husband's last name's Rackley, they're divorced. They were separated in 94, divorced in 95. His son, Daniel Rackley, actually lived there as well, and they're stupid people in those areas. They just say things like they call someone a name, they just go, oh, Rackley, instead of calling them by their first and last name. And it's like, you're talking about Mark Rackley's son. And I had these idiots go, oh, yeah, you. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm Mark Fleming's son. You're talking about Daniel Rackley. Two different people. This happened to the point that actually I had my life harassed from this. Excuse me. So that's what's put my studies and my work on hold for 7 years. Nothing else. Most damage has been caused in the last 7 years, in the last 7 years only. Despite everything else I've gone through, the majority of damage that's been caused in my life has only been an isolated issue caused in the last 7 years. Now, I have people who don't actually know me at all, but they've either searched social media, even wrong social media account. They may stalk my mother's family. And I will say this, if anyone ever comes up and says, I know Justin, I know his mother, then they don't know me. If you know me, I would have taken you to my father at Empire Bay and introduced you. Okay, you would know my cousins on my dad's side. You would know Auntie Linda. You would have come to Auntie Linda's place in the Parramatta area when she was still living there, and I used to go there every second Friday and have dinner with my Auntie Linda. I was still doing this up until 2015. So in 2015, my Auntie Linda and Auntie Sharon sold the holiday house on the Central Coast, and because Auntie Linda wanted to buy down near Barrel and move from Parramatta. So if you actually knew me, you would know this information. Now, people in the last 7 years have made comments about me, and I can honestly say they don't know me at all. They don't know my Auntie Linda. They don't know my dad's side of the family. They don't know Meredith from, lives on Shore Harbour, across the road from her, across the water from her brother, Jeffrey. So Meredith and Jeffrey, their father's last name was Williams, but their mother's a Fleming. Meredith used to sit back, I'm going to touch on the first subject, and say she always gets, she said, oh, people think she's North Italian with the way she looks. I'm like, we just throw nationalities. But I'm not going to actually, because this is my business account, so I'm not going to touch too much on that, because there's been some issues brought up with why I know other languages and so forth, and I just roll my eyes and think, are you kidding me? Next, I'll be going to bring up why do I know math or English. These questions of the last 7 years and the direction of these questions don't make sense, and they've caused damage. Again, in the last 7 years, so much damage has been caused, which is what's put my career and my studies on hold. Which is why I do need legal representation for this, which is what the whole idea of putting this post out there is. So, these people, one of them in particular is a Stephanie Tesalis. Now, I'll be very blunt here. Stephanie Tesalis doesn't know me. Even when I was briefly acquainted to her, I first met her in late 2004. I was introduced to her, that was it. Now, if I walked past her to get a coffee, because she used to always sit out the front of the coffee shop that I used to get my takeaway coffee from, I was always polite and said hello. This weirdo did actually stalk me. I was with my partner, John Cabino, at the time, and she actually did wound up at his work once. She has a very delusional fantasies, and even a delusional fantasies of being a friend of mine. I'm going to shut this down because, when to make up comments that, for example, that she believes to be my life is actually not true. So there's a lot of wrong information that come from, and I've said several times in the last 7 years, why are you listening to this wrong information, and why are you not listening to me? Because this doesn't make any sense for these ridiculous idiots to not be listening to me. Look, the other person I was going to say got involved, a Belinda Jeffries and then Anthony Toomer, her friend. Look, and I'm going to be really blunt and say, are you kidding me? So Belinda Jeffries, I never knew before late 2013. I was looking for a new hairdresser, like close to where I was living, and I just needed to get a haircut and hair treatment. Walked into her hair salon to get a haircut and hair treatment. That's how I know her. She involved herself in this in the last 7 years as well, somehow in a friend, and I'm furious with that. This is where I say it. I'm going to cut this because this is my business account, so I don't want to go on too much. I just want to say there's a reason why everything to do with my studies and my work was stopped, dead still for 7 years. 7 years is a very long time, but I couldn't move forward until this matter gets brought legally. And it has to go legally because it's just taken 7 years of my life away from me for no reason except in Australia we obviously don't have a decent legal system where you can say, okay, this is wrong, it needs to go to court now. You have to correct that wrong information. This can't continue. So I'm going to leave it there and say there's a good reason why. Then I'm going to actually, if you have a look around, my folders of work folders everywhere and so forth, and I'm going to talk about some of my studies like fashion design, interior design, and what I've done, what I've completed, what I achieved in life, and why it's really important that I get an actual solicitor involved regarding the last 7 years because, as I said, everything has been stopped. The only trouble caused in my life has been isolated only to the last 7 years.